A British tanker that Iran had detained is now on the move and leaving Iranian waters. The Stena Impero has started transmitting its location for the first time in weeks. Its owners say they'll comment further when the oil tanker reaches international waters. The Stena Impero left Iran's Bandar Abbas port, where it was taken after being seized in July. According to the Reuters news agency, the ship has set its destination as Port Rashid in the United Arab Emirates. Well, Iran's Revolutionary Guards seized the ship in the Strait of Hormuz 2 months ago. Tehran said it had violated maritime rules, but its owner says the company isn't aware of any formal charges. It was detained just weeks after British military seized an Iranian oil tanker in Gibraltar.
Democrats have a new word for the White House response to a whistleblower.
This is a cover-up.
The accusation follows a newly released whistleblower's report that says the White House tried to lock down the transcript of a phone call. In that July call, President Donald Trump pressed Ukraine's president to find dirt on a rival presidential candidate, in this case, former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden.
Reads like a classic organized crime shakedown.
The report says U.S. officials told the unnamed whistleblower that they were directed by White House lawyers to transfer the transcript of a conversation to a separate electronic system that is otherwise used to store and handle classified information, even though the call did not contain anything remotely sensitive. That left Trump's new acting director of national intelligence explaining on Capitol Hill why he withheld that mid-August report from Congress until Thursday.
We consulted with the White House counsel's office, and we're advised that much of the information in the complaint was, in fact, subject to executive privilege.
Now to Iran, where President Hassan Rouhani has called on the United States to end its policy of maximum pressure and urged Washington to return to dialogue, logic and reason. Speaking in New York a day after addressing the United Nations, President Rouhani also said he would be prepared to hold talks if President Trump lifted sanctions against Iran. DW's Alexandra von Naumann spoke with US Special Representative for Iran, Brian Hook, and asked him about Washington's strategy.
The US government has imposed new sanctions and travel restrictions on the Iranian regime, but Tehran seems to remain defiant. So is EU maximum pressure strategy not working?
No, we're very pleased with it, and we're also very pleased here at the United Nations this week that Germany, France, and the United Kingdom have announced that we need a new nuclear deal that is much more comprehensive than the Iran nuclear deal that the United States left last year.
When India revoked Kashmir's autonomy last month, it cut off phone and internet access and imposed strict restrictions on public movement. Pakistan and India have long been at odds over Kashmir, but the more than 700,000 troops deployed in the region have prompted fresh international concern. Pakistan's Prime Minister met with US President Donald Trump at the UN this week and wants the Kashmir issue front and centre.
Unless we highlight what is going on in Kashmir, the world is not going to know, nor will the world understand that this is just the beginning. It's going to get worse, and there's a potential that two nuclear-armed countries will come face to face at some stage.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi claims the move was meant to end terrorism.
South Korea is urging Japan to retract its renewed claims to the disputed islands known as Dokdo in South Korea and Takashima in Japan. Seoul has already summoned a senior Japanese diplomat to lodge a protest over the latest defense white paper.
It says Japan's ridiculous claim will be of no help to already strained bilateral relations. The white paper also raises Tokyo's caution level about North Korea's missile capability.
The report underscores Japan's fear of being targeted by its neighbor, given Pyongyang's success in making miniaturized warheads. The white paper also devotes more space to China's growing military might.
To stay ahead, Japan is planning to buy US-made F-35 fighter jets and other advanced weapons. It's part of a proposed 1.2% increase in defense spending to a record 5.3 trillion yen, or $49 billion. Indonesian President Joko Widodo is calling for a thorough investigation into the deaths of 2 university students during demonstrations against proposed new laws. Now, the deaths came during a protest which turned violent in Kendari City in southeast Sulawesi province. Students have been holding demonstrations in many cities over the last few days against planned laws that would ban premarital sex, weaken the anti-graft body, amongst other measures.
A second Indonesian student protester has died on Friday after succumbing to head injuries sustained in the riots. The death of the 19-year-old student was the second fatality directly linked to days of street battles across Indonesia that left more than 300 people injured. It also sparked calls for a probe into allegations of police brutality. On Thursday evening, a 21-year-old university student was rushed to hospital suffering from a chest wound and later died.
Now, authorities in Nigeria say they have rescued 300 captives, mainly children in chains, from a building in the city of Kaduna. According to a Reuters reporter at the scene, most of the children were boys. So far, it's unclear how long the children were held captive for.
Well, first of all, this is quite a disturbing discovery. We know that the raid actually took place on Thursday. The police force in Kaduna State, actually the police chief, did talk to the press to say that this building was raided on Thursday. About 300 people were discovered, mostly children and mostly boys. It appears that this was some type of Islamic school. At least it was operating in the name of an Islamic school, but there have been pictures that the police have released that shows the scarring on these children's bodies. Some of the people who were living there say that they were forced to stay there against their will, that they were not able to leave. And it's believed that many of these children were actually brought to this place by their relatives.
Prince Harry is retracing his mother's steps through a minefield in Angola. It's one of the next stops on his 10-day African tour. Princess Diana made the removal of landmines a primary focus of her humanitarian work. She visited Angola just a few months before her death. Never got to see the full outcome of her efforts, but Harry will, as CNN royal correspondent Max Foster reports.
22 years after Princess Diana's visit, they're still finding and destroying landmines in Angola. Victoria has no memory of the princess. She doesn't even remember the brutal 27-year civil war. But it's up to her to remove its lethal remnants. She's one of the best at it, chosen to meet Prince Harry. The pace is painstaking. They clear just 40 square meters per deminer per day. Next to a village where children cross tracks that hundreds of mines were once laid to protect.
Now, with that missing money mystery, an airline baggage handler arrested right here in New York, accused of swiping nearly $300,000. Gio Benitez is there at JFK Airport. Gio, police think they have their man, but they still don't have the cash.
Yeah, Cecilia, good morning. That's right, because they say that money is missing in action right now. The man denies ever taking it. In fact, he says he doesn't even know where it is. But investigators, they're not buying it. This morning, the FBI is on the hunt for $250,000 stolen off an airplane tarmac. They say this man, 40-year-old Delta baggage handler Quincy Thorpe, is responsible. Here's how federal authorities say it played out. On Tuesday, an armored vehicle was delivering 8 bags of cash to JFK Airport to be flown to Miami. According to a police complaint, surveillance video allegedly shows Thorpe scanning most of the bags and loading them onto the plane, except for one, which the FBI alleges he placed into a container attached to a vehicle. The police complaint says he then drove off in that vehicle.
Fresh off the plane from the United States, Scott Morrison is focusing on farmers, putting forward an extra $100 million in relief. But the opposition says it's too little, too late, and the government needs a better plan to deal with drought.
From the bright lights of the Big Apple to a dusty paddock in Dalby, Scott Morrison's in Queensland with an unlikely fundraiser.
He's got me in training today. Yeah. Fiver for a farmer.
11-year-old Jack Byrne from Sydney's Northern Beaches has raised $1.6 million for drought-affected farmers.
Thanks for everything you've done, mate. About that on the way up.
Yeah. The PM is also stepping up to give farmers a helping hand, announcing a $100 million package, including access to discounted healthcare, counselling and more money for skills training, plus more funding for charities to provide vouchers for basics like food and bills.
If there needs to be more, there'll be more.